We're talking about the Beatitudes. We are at the 7th verse of Matthew 5. Let's remember these are the words of Jesus. And here we go. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Mercy is a good thing, and it's greatly needed in our world, isn't it? So I want to give a definition of mercy. It's up there. Mercy is giving what is needed as an act of grace. All right, so you can't give mercy to someone who deserves it necessarily. Justice, you could give what people deserve. But mercy is giving what people don't deserve. Mercy is an act of generosity. It is a good thing. Now, there are two kinds of mercy generally listed in the Scriptures. And here they are. They are generosity and kindness for the poor, and forgiveness. Now, you may recall that when we use this word poor, and we go back to the first sermon, that the poor are more than those who don't have money. You remember that? According to Dr. Joel Green, a professor at Asbury Seminary, he's, in his analysis of the poor, said the poor are those who are marginalized. They are the rejected, those who are often shamed in this world, those who are excluded. Jesus constantly dealt with the poor. So when he dealt with the Canaanite woman, for instance, he was dealing with the poor. Now, she may have had enough money to get along in the world, but she was still a part of the poor because she was an enemy of Israel. And Israelites didn't want to talk to Canaanites, so they rejected them. The blind were part of the poor. People who were considered to be owned by others, they were a part of the poor. So slaves were a part of the poor. In the Gospel of Luke, women and children are a part of the poor because they were, in that day and time, owned by men. So when it says we do acts of generosity and kindness for the poor, it's that we are generous to include, to love, to give what is needed to those who are marginalized. So it's just an act of mercy would be someone who's excluded from a conversation, to include them in that conversation when everyone else wants to exclude them would be an act of mercy. All right? And then there is forgiveness. Now keep in mind that mercy flows out of the nature of God. So when Jesus says this, he's reflecting who he is. Jesus welcomes those who are the rejected. He wants to forgive those who have sinned. Jesus is one who is merciful. God is merciful. It's very important to realize this is out of the very essence of who God is. Now, later on in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus will tell a story about mercy. And most of us will probably remember this story. It's in the 18th chapter of Matthew. And the situation is there is a king. And the king decides to settle his accounts by making those who owe him money to pay up, to pay the money. All right, and it says here that the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves, with the marginalized. When he began the reckoning, one owed him 10,000 talents. All right, 10,000 talents. Now, let's just pause here for a second and unravel that 10,000 talents. Many of us may know this, but I'm going to go through it anyway. A little review is sometimes helpful. A talent was equivalent to 15 years, or a little more than 15 years, of a daily laborer's wage. All right? 15 years of wages. And this person owns 10,000 talents. All right? So then, I did a little math, and I'm not that great at math. I'm better with words. So after the first service, someone tried to correct me on my math. But they forgot that they owed 10,000 talents and not 1 talent. All right? So keep that in mind. But if it's $50 a day, let's just throw that out there. Day's labor, $50 a day. At 365 days, times 15 years, times 10,000, you come up with, according to my calculations, and, I could be wrong. I know you'll all go out and check. I got to find my little note. Where is it? Well, anyway, here it is. Ready for this? It's 2,737,500,000. The person owes almost $3 billion. Now, Jesus does this when he tells a story. He exaggerates. And why does he do that? To make the point, all right? So, this person owes almost $3 billion. And this is what he says, and this makes it all the more catching. He says, the slave fell at his knees and said, "Have patience with me. I will pay you everything." It's ridiculous, isn't it? How can you pay nearly $3 billion? But out of compassion for him, the Lord of the slave released him and forgave all the debt. Whoa. That's generosity and kindness, isn't it? That's how generous our God is. All right. But the story doesn't end there. You remember what happens? The same slave does what? He goes out after he's been forgiven nearly $3 billion, and he finds someone who owes him money. And the person who owes him money owes 100 denarii, or 100 days' wages. Now, at $50 a day, I think I am safe in saying that's $5,000. Am I right about that? $5,000. Now, that's still substantial, isn't it? But it's more within reason. Usually, you might be able to pay that back over a period of time. And so the person who owes $5,000 falls down and pleads with him the exact same thing. Have patience with me and I will pay you. But the guy refuses and has him thrown into prison until he can pay the last penny. All right? And then some other servants see this happening. And they know he's just been forgiven $3 billion. They go back to the king and said, you won't believe what he did. And they tell the story. He has the wicked servant come back in and says, what? And this is what he says, you wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt. You should have had mercy on your fellow slave, as I have had mercy on you. So he handed him over to be imprisoned till he paid the last penny. And then Jesus says this, so my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother or sister from your heart. In other words, this is a parable about grace, mercy, forgiveness. And Jesus is wanting to make the point. God has forgiven us so much. We shouldn't withhold it from others. Well, that makes sense from this story, doesn't it? It makes sense. But I know this. Forgiveness is difficult, isn't it? Having mercy on the marginalized is difficult too. It's just difficult. Now, why is it difficult? It's difficult because usually we've been hurt. We've been hurt badly. When we're hurt, it's hard to let go of that. When we're hurt, we grieve. Grieving is a process. It's ongoing. It just doesn't happen like that. I think the same thing is true of forgiveness. That's why forgiveness, all through the scriptures, is always connected to prayer. We ask God for forgiveness, and we ask God to help us to forgive. So when we have a wound from someone doing something wrong, like stealing from us, then we make it a matter of prayer. And at first, we may not even want to forgive the person. We want them to pay. But we ask God to help us to have the desire to forgive. A first step. And then on it goes. We want to maybe understand that person who has hurt us. And that might help us to see them more as a whole person and not simply as the person who wronged us. And on it goes till finally we are able to let go and forgive the person and do the spiritual surgery. That's an act of mercy, an act of grace. So, forgiveness is difficult. It involves prayer. But let us remember that forgiveness is not something you can excuse. Forgiveness is for something that's wrong, a wrongful hurt, all right? And it cannot be excused. This is important. If you can excuse it, it usually doesn't need forgiven. An example. About a week ago, my little granddaughter, whom I love, Evelyn Rose is her name. And Evelyn Rose and I were playing, and she got carried away. She hit me in the face about as hard as she could. I was shocked. I didn't know a 2-year-old could hit that hard. It really hurt. I said, "Ellen, you hit Papa." It's like I was incredulous. She really smacked me, left a mark. All right. Now, I think that's a teachable moment. Okay. I want to teach Evelyn Rose. Evelyn Rose, it's not good to hit Papa in the face. Okay? We don't play that way. You don't hit people in the face. Now, do I need to forgive that? No. Why? Because I can excuse it. Why can I excuse it? Because she's 2 years old, right? And she doesn't know any better. She's got to learn that. And she did hit me on purpose, by the way. But she hit me on purpose because she was playing. She didn't really mean me any harm, okay? So I can excuse that. Therefore, I don't have to forgive it, all right? But let's suppose you invite somebody into your house to give them a new start, a new beginning, because this person has made some poor decisions along the way. And they're in a vulnerable spot, and you now want to give them a new beginning. And so you enter into this relationship, and they come into your house. And then you begin to notice that some things that you treasure are missing, and you can't find them. At first, you think you've misplaced the things, and then things keep disappearing. And then you catch the person stealing from you. That can probably not be excused because it's breaking a commandment, isn't it? But it's also done something else. What's it done? It's broken your trust in that person. You have been merciful, and now that person has abused that mercy. Now, you might say it's understandable. The person grew up in a way that encouraged stealing. Maybe the person was even taught to steal. All right? But you can't excuse it. You may understand it, but you cannot excuse it. You can't let the person keep on stealing from you, can you? No, it's not healthy for that person. It's not healthy for you. And so that needs to be forgiven. Now, we may have to create some boundaries with that person. We may have to say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to move out. All right? But we want to do it mercifully. And so we will not shame the person, demean the person, tell the person how awful they are, that we hate them, that they reject them, that whatever. We're not going to do that. We may even help the person find another place to live. But they can't live under our roof. We need to forgive and then do the spiritual surgery that when we think of that person, we can think of them with compassion instead of merely, this is a thief. Forgiveness is for a wrongful hurt that cannot be excused. It's not easy to forgive. Jesus knows this. That's why he says, blessed are the merciful. The world needs people who give mercy, who reflect the compassion and the forgiveness of God in this world. And it's good news. God has promised mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Have you ever wondered who was in that crowd that day that Jesus spoke these words? I've often wondered, was the thief on the cross there? Do you remember the thief? I wonder if he was there. I mean, he was crucified in Jerusalem. I wonder if he was there. Did he go down to see Jesus in Jerusalem? End up on a cross? Maybe not. But if he did, maybe that's why he was able to say, this man has done nothing wrong. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. That's mercy. It's mercy. It's not something he deserved. God promises mercy. Those who are marginalized, kicked about in this world, those who are poor, rejected, Jesus says one day you'll receive mercy. And in the meantime, let's give maybe even what is sometimes denied us. Sometimes the world keeps rejecting people. But that doesn't mean we reject others. Let's give the mercy of God to others. Let's give forgiveness because it's an act of grace. And we have been forgiven so much by Jesus. All the sin, past, present, and future, taken into himself on the cross. Pray with me, would you? Lord God, sometimes we forget all the mercy and grace we've received. We don't want to take it for granted. And nor, O Lord, do we want to deny it to others, even when they hurt us. Oh God, help us to follow you, Jesus, to be so filled with your Spirit that forgiveness becomes a reflection of who you are. Amen.